Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hard Things Podcast. This is your host, Blaine Burgess, and this is episode 24 of the Hard Things Podcast. As you may well know, we did 3 seasons, 7 episodes to kind of start off. So now this is going to be the 3rd episode that is just kind of a chronological order deal. I'm not sure if the RSS feed is set up properly to show the different episodes in order. So I'm going to start going through and just making sure that everything's showing up the way I want it to, which is obviously just chronological order. Episode 24 should be at the top. If you had to dig for it, that's obviously not a good thing. It's already not a whole lot of listeners out there. The listenership is growing, but I want to make it as easy as possible for people to find. So as a reminder, last week we talked about being able to relax, having FOMO, different things like that people may often experience, especially in the world we live in. And kind of along the same topic, we're gonna stay with the same deal as last week, kind of the same vein, but maybe an extension of it. So if you listen to last week's episode, you really kind of took it to heart and you want to try to relax, but there's just something that doesn't quite sit right with you. I think one of the hardest things we can do as human beings is know when to leave the party, know when to kind of let go. It is difficult, especially when something is really kind of core to your identity, to even start to have that conversation in terms of something that's not serving you, something that might serve you partially. I think can be a really tough thing to do. I know for me, if I look back on my life, a lot of the mistakes that I've made has just been mistakes of kind of making the mistake and then letting the mistake drag out, if that makes sense. So if you find yourself unable to relax, there could be this kind of root in a problem. And I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but example would be, at least for me, I think, I wanted to be good at football. I love football. I grew up with it. But at a certain point, transitioning out of kind of professional, semi-professional, or like being on track to try and be a professional athlete, being a good athlete, good student athlete, I think it's one of the most difficult things to do, is to know when that journey is over, especially being younger. When you're like 18 to 21, kind of in that span, you know that you have likely more, more potential, because you are young, you feel yourself getting better, you notice that you're getting better. And sometimes changing levels, so going from high school to college, you wonder how much of this is everyone better than me and how much of this is I just need to grow and get better myself. I just need to work hard and, put the time in, and then I'll catch up. And oftentimes you don't know until after the fact what the right answer is. So I can look back, high school, I felt pretty dominant in my role, my position on the team, and definitely was a large contributor to our success. It was pretty evident, and I got better every year. And that transition from high school to college, you kind of let go of high school and that career, and you want to, challenge yourself. You want to grow. So when I think of my transition, not only did I go pro in football, which football, the FCS level, it's still Division I, but it's not like the top of the top. of college football, but it's still very competitive. It's still a lot of hard work. And then going pro essentially in academics as well. That's definitely Ivy Leagues. If you go to an Ivy League school, you're going pro in academics. The people there are absolute mutants. If you think you're smart, you go to a place like this, there's so many bright people, so many people with talents that you might never have. And to be honest, like, you have talents that they might never have. And kind of the mixture of all those is what makes someone great, someone succeed, or maybe not succeed. So when you go to a school like that too, you kind of have, two tracks, kind of a more artistic track and more of an intellectual track. And I think for me, I was intellectually smart, but I think maybe the more artistic track would have been better for me. Overall, I would have got more out of it. But, that I couldn't let go of the intellectual side to explore the more artistic side, more creative side. And I couldn't let go of athletics and football as would have maybe been necessary for me to explore more of the school aspect, to really branch out, make new friends outside of athletics, and develop myself further. Because you only have 24 hours in a day. So for me, it was school, and it was kind of what interested me. I had maybe 3 choices of things I wanted to do, and I can only pick one. So I kind of just had to pick what I thought was the right choice. And to be honest, I didn't spend enough time choosing intentionally. So for me, looking back on that, just knowing that not giving up sports, or not giving up kind of the safe, quote unquote, safe route academically, it stifled my development. And it's something now I'm, 10 years later, I'm getting into more creative aspects of life, more writing, more performing, having done comedy a little bit late last year and early this year. Just different things I could have had 10 years of experience at, and now I am just a few months along, don't have much momentum. And of course, you get into school now, really putting all my eggs in the chiropractic basket to really get good at it as quickly as I can. You just gave up a lot. I gave up a lot for something that wasn't, my highest, ability. I had some ability, but it wasn't what I need to be all in on to really, share with the world, and also to have that benefit me and have the world kind of share back with me. I think it's, a different path may have been more profitable, maybe a little bit sooner. And also I could have made a bigger impact outside of myself and my family. So it's a lot of stuff, things that I think about a lot. I think about with my current pursuits, as I've been able to focus my mind on what really matters. This is something I find that really, really matters, is knowing what eggs to put your basket in. When I think back to that time as well, going back to kind of the more physical, like, body side of things, again, you don't know in the moment. You don't know, hey, by my junior or senior year, am I going to develop a little bit more? Am I going to be able to put in the effort to really make this thing worth it? You also are kind of influenced by other things outside. So I'm someone that I've always tried to be loyal and have integrity. And there's a guy, I won't name. He started with my recruiting class at Harvard football freshman year. He showed up to camp. He kind of had a rough few weeks, and then he just stopped coming to practice. And I kind of assumed, as I'm sure they probably want you to, that if you kind of use Harvard football to get into Harvard, as one of your, every student that comes there has things that they bring to the table. And the people, like 30 or so people they bring in for football, you're deemed a good football player by the coaches, and they want you there. You're smart, so you can hack it academically, or so they think, and you can hack it athletically, and you kind of get their stamp of approval, and that stamp of approval is worth a lot. I mean, if I want to go to Harvard, I don't know if I get to go without that athletic stamp. It kind of was the cherry on top of my resume and probably got me across the finish line. So this individual stopped coming to practice, and there's really the only repercussions were socially. I think socially, the football team at that point was like, hey, quitter, these guys that, we kind of got to know each other online before even going to school a little bit. And then showing up to camp, you kind of have this bonding moment. And, this guy now, you see him around campus. He's kind of he was recruited as an offensive lineman, so he was, over 300 pounds in high school, most likely. Showed up to school, and he was, like, very small. He was, like, maybe 240. So they switched, a friend of mine and him, they switched positions, O-line and tight end. My other friend showed up kind of heavier, and they just decided to flip-flop them, which, is what it is. Harvard is kind of tight end U and H-back U in a way. We had a couple guys go to the NFL and played in the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl. So very competitive there. And this guy, I don't know necessarily if there was like writing on the wall that he wasn't going to really play or anything. Or like what other factors went into it. I don't know much about that guy because he kind of disappeared. He went to school with us. You'd see him around campus, but he was definitely not on the radar. I think kind of tried to keep a low profile, especially for that first year. Having used Harvard football to get in and then just kind of blew up that commitment. So for me, that commitment was, no matter what pain and suffering or like, on the team, there's a lot of aspects of being in a locker room. And if you, it is a bit of a hierarchy. So if you're not the top players, one of the, even being in the starting lineup doesn't really guarantee that you get treated with respect. A lot of times people would, I always struggled with, I would work really hard. I would get put on maybe the second team, and coaches kind of use you for motivation for other players. So you don't know all the time if it's like your effort and your talent are getting you where you're going, or if you are getting promoted to motivate someone else and you're just kind of a pawn. So there's all these like head games that get worked on, and coaches will give nicknames to different players. And like my nickname, I'm not going to even mention it. But some of my friends and former teammates still call me this nickname. It was given to me by a coach that a little bit deranged, a little bit, kind of out of control. And to me, the things that I was dealing with, kind of being overweight and chubby for reasons maybe kind of outside of my control, this nickname was, in my opinion, kind of a form of bullying. And it's something that anytime someone used that name, which was daily, I just was like madly triggered. And I didn't know what was happening to me. I would get triggered in my nervous system, and I would be, pissed. And then that would influence my mood, and I'm already doing a couple of the hardest jobs, things that, deserve respect. At the end of the day, I'm all for feedback, really big on feedback, but, okay, so maybe I'm not the best player on my team or in my position group, but I'm showing up every day. I'm putting the work in. I'm doing my best, and oftentimes, my best was definitely, faltering, because I had so many different, things I was trying to juggle. But no matter what, respect is, if you're a human being, you deserve dignity, you deserve respect. And sometimes that would be kind of fleeting. In a football team, it's kind of a motivation thing. It's kind of a dominance hierarchy thing. It's a strange place to be overall. So, you put yourself through that. You subject yourself to that every day. I could have just been like this other guy and said, to hell with this. You guys want to treat me that way. I'm going to go explore the academic side. I'm going to go set myself up for the rest of my life. But to me, that wasn't really an option, because I genuinely, I expected myself to play there for 4 years. And it's, kind of two sides of the coin there is, I want to have integrity, to be seen as having integrity. But also when people ask, I went to Harvard, I played 4 years, I contributed to, an Ivy League title, and it's something I can ultimately take pride in. But looking back on it, all of the kind of the daily bullshit that you have to put up with and all of the hard physical work and mental work, it was definitely too much for 18, 19-year-old me. I was not well prepared for that. So looking back, you can see the importance of being true to yourself, really thinking about all the options, because the option was to stop playing football. I had friends that stopped playing football, and I saw the consequences, and it was just, socially, it's kind of social suicide in a way, unless you kind of had an angle. But for me, I'm not someone that's, I would have had to dive all into kind of one of these other clubs or organizations, and I just don't know if I would have, fared well there either. That's the thing. So for me, like, football was something in known quantity, kind of the devil kind of thing. So all of this rambling to say that hindsight is 2020, and I can see that I shot myself in the foot by kind of holding on to something that was already leaving me. Fast forward, 7 to 10 years, and, here I am in life, still kind of lost, trying to find my way, because I really never considered my options fully. And, just when you're in survival mode, you have, traumatic brain injury, you have maybe different issues with different systems in your body, especially stemming from nervous system and brain issues. You're kind of in survival mode. And I would say I definitely was. Football genuinely put me in survival mode and kept me there. And it's taken me about that long for my brain to regain its kind of natural function and just operate at a base level. And this whole, last 3 to 4 years has really been an awakening for me into just awareness and realizing, like, wow, I really put myself in a bad spot and I'm not living up to my full potential. And it's just been amazing to kind of, come out of that and see things for what they are, and then be able to apply those lessons to the future. So now I kind of know, in terms of focus, like, I got to focus on school, and there's obviously distractions in everyday life, but having moved to Dallas, made it through this last trimester, succeeded really, all A's and B's in my classes this last term. I feel like I laid down a brick, and now I got to go do it again, starting next week. Just keep laying bricks until it all comes together in the next, 2.5 years. So just grateful to have made it to a point where I can start really living that life I should have been living. And that brings me to probably, I don't know if it'll be the final point, but kind of getting towards the end here. We're 20 minutes in. Again, I want to keep this under 30. So I do want to say, how I learned from that, how I'm applying it now is, again, chiropractic school is my number one focus. So anything that detracts from that, anything that takes away from my focus on what I need to do is something I really have to put on the chopping block. And things I wouldn't necessarily have put on the chopping block before are kind of up for debate. So one thing, this is kind of a good theme heading into the weekend, but I am competing, USA weightlifting. Obviously, I've done episodes talking about my progression in weightlifting. I have signed up for the USA Weightlifting AO2, which is equivalent to the AO1 they host at the Arnold Classic. I did almost a whole episode about the Arnold really early on in the show. And two things about that. So part of my past life was I always was kind of chubbier, heavier, different things. And so this meet, I am cutting to a 240 pound class. I'm doing it from about 250 pounds, walk around every day. And there is this part of my past that I'll dive into sometimes. Obviously I moved to Dallas. There's a lot of good food in the area. There's a lot of stress from school. And I found myself trying to do too many things. Spread myself really thin. I got stressed. And I noticed I put on about, 10 pounds, especially towards the end of the term, closer to finals. So literally like 2 weeks before finals, I was like, all right, obviously I'm conscious of it. Something's going on. I notice I'm heavier. The scale's heavier. I weigh myself like once or twice a week. And I was able to pinpoint exactly what it was that was causing these issues. So for one, it was the stress from school. I wasn't doing enough to kind of calm down and relax after, really putting my all into school. And again, it's kind of like what I was talking about with the football locker room is someone, you have a nickname and this nickname you don't like, someone calls you that name, you kind of get triggered. It's like that. It's like little triggers that just kind of piss you off, and then you don't do anything to deal with them. And I think at the beginning of the term, I was doing a really good job of yoga, meditation, all these different things to take that energy and put it towards something good, being more flexible, breathing with it, sitting with it, and then releasing it. So again, this episode is about letting go. And I just noticed that those things weren't, I wasn't sticking to my practices as, easily and as consistently as I was at the beginning of the term. And I did notice, obviously, food creeping back in, making new friends, doing a little social thing, having some drinks every now and then. And you just realize, like, all right, I'm replacing the healthy coping mechanisms with unhealthy ones, and it's caused, a little backslide on the health wagon. And really the only reason I am kind of maintaining about 250 pounds is because I'm weightlifting still pretty much full time. So, all the pain that I have from training and the difficulty of school, and even the next term is going to kind of ramp it up a little bit. I have more labs than ever before so far because I am on campus now. The labs are kind of picking up. And, I'm thinking to myself, maybe weightlifting has to go on the shelf. And it's not something where I have to kind of retire from it fully. But it would be nice to just focus on aerobic exercise for a while. And aerobic exercise really obviously good for the brain. Doing things to support my brain through the stress of school, I think, could be a good focus. And it's not that I have to give up weightlifting forever, but I can always just put it on the shelf and come back to it when, maybe give it a term, see how it goes, see if I'm happy with life without weightlifting as it has been for the last, 6-7 years. And that to me is kind of a proxy for like football. So in a way, doing weightlifting has allowed me to feel that feeling I get from being a good athlete, from being recognized and noticed as it, being seen as it, being able to post on social media and go compete and people see me lift and win competitions and, get medals. It's kind of an achievement thing. And it's kind of my last connection. Obviously we all get older. I'm 33 now. I'm qualified to be a master next year, which is the 35 and up division of weightlifting. So I compete and can win a lot. There's not a lot of folks my age sticking with it and kind of lifting the weights that I'm able to. There's only a handful. So there is some incentive for me staying. But again, and not to besmirch Harvard football, but again, it's FCS. It is Division I, but it's not in the bowl series. It's not Ohio State versus Michigan. It's not these like huge stakes. I kind of sacrificed a lot to become an Ivy League champion. But again, at the end of the day, what is that worth to you? To me, it is worth something. I enjoyed a lot of time too there, but financially, in terms of future, in terms of, evolving and growing as a human being, the benefit of it kind of ended, certainly, in the month after, we achieved that and I graduated from Harvard and I moved on. At that point, the Ivy League title is not reaping additional benefits for me. And I would say masters weightlifting is, even so the weightlifting I've been doing, it's not like I'm going to the Olympics. So the meaning of that, becoming like a national champion, for example, would be cool, but also what value does that really have in terms of my goals, in terms of building myself up and becoming the best chiropractor I can be and all that. I think there's a little piece of weightlifting I'd like to keep. But especially when you go into the masters and it's like, what is this really worth? Again, there is some worth there, but all of the effort, all of the time, all of the focus that I have to put into it to be good at it, it's a balance. And if it's taken away from my school, my ability to learn and be the best doctor I can be, then really, it's hard to justify spending all that time. And not only that, but like physically, it takes a toll on you. You're sore, you got injuries, you're kind of doing extra things to maintain your body. So all of that is to say that I kind of have a choice coming up. And it's like, do I want to transition into exercising for health? No competitions, no goals, everything like that. I think it has historically been hard for me to find motivation without something like that. But also, I do know that, I think there is a version of me doing aerobic exercise that maybe drops a little bit of muscle, drops a lot more fat, and I can almost lose that chubby moniker. It's something that I've like maybe just held on to just for sake of like, that's how it's always been. That's how I feel comfortable. I like to eat. It's not that you can't eat, but you just can't eat certain things. And you really have to focus on, whole foods and lots of protein, leaner cuts of protein for the most part. And, that's all well and good. But it's just not traditionally what I've done. I've allowed myself to indulge. So I think the big key here is that the balance, like finding a balance. We don't want to give up everything we love, but sometimes you have to give up something you love to make space for something that you might love even more. And it's that uncertainty, I think, of not knowing. If I had given up Harvard football, would I have found something better? I don't know. Maybe not. Once you give up football, can you go back? Probably not. If you're off the team for a year, it's not like you just asked to come back. I saw some people do it for different reasons, but who knows if that would have been an option at that point. So, again, all that is to say that there's consequences to our decisions. And sometimes I think we're just afraid of the consequences, avoiding them. Even in some ways, I think your body and your brain knows when a consequence is for you, when you're just avoiding a consequence of a decision. But the decision is right. And you're just, not living up to who you are, not living up to being your best self, which I think is just it's a really tough place to be. And I think it's a place where a lot of people find themselves. I mean, if you have like kind of weight and emotional issues, if you have, struggles in life, addiction, I think especially, is something that really it all stems from not living your truth, not being your best self, and you kind of know it at a certain level. So I will kind of sum it up by saying that, I'm really, at this point, I'm really weighing the decision to at least take some time off from the weightlifting, but possibly giving it up, the competition aspect, for good. And, to everyone out there, I think everyone has these things that they're dealing with. So if you are kind of caught in the inertia of this decision, just know, like, it is serious. There are real consequences, but I think as you struggle with a decision and the further you go with it, the longer you kind of hold that, you're going to sway 60-40 to one side or the other. You're going to sway 70-30. You're going to sway, 75-25. And as it starts to become more certain to one side or the other, I don't know what the threshold is, but at a certain point, I think you're going to know. I think giving space for intuition, giving space for learning more over time, get as much information as you can on what the consequences are, what the different ramifications are. Get as much information as you can on the outcomes, So like example, like weightlifting, I know I could win like a Masters World Championship next year. But I got to figure out, like, are there people from other countries that are just going to come in and beat me easily? Like you kind of have to look at previous competitions and then look at the other time I could spend. So say I'm not lifting weights competitively, what can I fill my time with that I might love even more, as I transition into a new phase of life? So, getting as much information as you can. And then, like I said, like giving the space for your intuition and your kind of who you are to sway that decision. Again, you get to that 75, 25, 80, 20, distribution on that decision. And like, once you get to about that, I think you just you're never going to be 100% sure. So you just got to jump in with 2 feet and just pick a time frame. So for me, it would be till the end of the year, probably. Give it a couple good months and then reevaluate. And when you reevaluate, for me, if I stopped weightlifting, that's 4 months of not lifting, 4 months of time that you can't get back in terms of development. But it's also 4 months that I could heal. Maybe I feel better. Maybe I get into something new, some kind of new competitive sport that I like aerobically. Maybe I make a new friend or two. Maybe I get better grades. All these different things could happen. And with weightlifting specifically, it's something that if I miss it, I can get back into it. Come January, new year, new me. And maybe I, compete at a lower weight class and, have new goals with that are even more enticing than the ones I have now. So you just never know. And sometimes you got to hop in. So I'm not completely sold one way or the other quite yet. I think a lot will be decided. I might know definitively after Sunday, after I compete, whether or not I'll continue. Maybe that competitive fire will get lit again, and maybe not. But I've collected a lot of information. I got a couple more pieces to collect, especially at this competition, and then I'll just give it space. If I'm not going to compete in December at the AO finals, I kind of have 2 weeks after this competition to really decide. So in that 2 week time period, I'm going to give myself the space to just feel it, think about the information, and we'll go from there. So if you yourself are struggling with a difficult decision in life, I hope this episode helped. It's really helpful to speak on things. So whether you have family, friends, or even a stranger at a bar who will just listen for a half hour, I highly recommend talking about it. Talk it through, make a list of pros and cons. And then again, give yourself the time, don't wait forever, but give yourself the time to feel it and sit in it. And it may not ultimately be the right decision, but even wrong decisions can lead you to a right decision at some point. And some would even argue there's no such thing as right or wrong. So that might be a topic for another day. But for this August 29th, 2024, we are done for the day. I'm going to go to the gym, do a workout and coach, and upload this episode. So I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, I'm excited for this whole slate of college football games this weekend. No NFL yet. But yeah, tonight, lots of games, and a game pretty much every day this weekend. It'll give me something to do while I shed these last, 5 to 7 pounds over the weekend, which thankfully a lot will be water. But watching football, watching weightlifting, competing, all things I love to do. So I'm excited. I hope you have a great weekend, and we will see you next week. Blaine out.